Part 1 of Recipes for Epicures. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Clarica. Recipes for Epicures by Joseph Tilden. Introductory Note. Major Joseph Tilden was in his time one of the most famous Bohemians and epicureans of the Pacific coast. Ever since his death his many friends have been trying to learn the culinary secrets which made a repast of his devising so delicious. He had given his recipes to but few, and those few his most intimate friends and fellow spirits. One of the most favored of his old companions has given this complete collection of his recipes for publication. San Francisco, May 1907. Soups and Chowders. Onion soup. Place 6 ounces of butter in a large saucepan over the fire, and stir into it 4 large white onions, cut up, not sliced. Stew this very slowly for 1 hour, stirring frequently to prevent its scorching. Add salt, pepper, cayenne, and about 1 quart of stock, and cook 1 hour longer. Then stir into the mixture 1 1/2 cups of milk and simmer for a few minutes. Have ready a soup tureen. In it beat the yolks of 4 eggs with 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan cheese. Stir the hot soup into this, beating until it thickens a little. A slice of toasted French bread should be placed in each plate, and the soup poured over it. Palestine soup. Slice 2 or 3 Jerusalem artichokes and place in 2 quarts of boiling water. Cook for 1 1/2 hours, then rub the artichokes through a colander and add to them 1 pint of the water in which they were boiled. Stir in 2 tablespoonfuls of flour rubbed into the same amount of butter. Add 2 cups of milk and boil for 10 minutes. Season with salt and pepper and serve with croutons. Black bean soup. Soak overnight 1 quart of black turtle beans in water to cover them. In the morning, strain and boil them in 4 quarts of water for 1 hour, skimming frequently. Then put into the liquor 2 white onions sliced, 2 stalks of celery cut into bits, salt, pepper, cayenne, and 1 teaspoonful each of cloves and allspice. Boil for 3 hours. Remove from the stove and add enough stock to thin the mixture to the consistency of a cream soup. Pour into it nearly a tumbler of sherry and add a thinly sliced lime. Place over the fire to boil for 5 minutes. Just before serving, stir into the soup 3 hard-boiled eggs, finely chopped. Force meatballs may be added. Parker House tomato soup. Put into a saucepan 5 pounds of tomatoes, either fresh or canned, with 1 quart of water, salt, pepper, cayenne, 1 1/2 tablespoonfuls of sugar, and 3 ounces of butter rubbed into 1 heaping tablespoonful of flour. Cook slowly 1 hour. Remove from the fire and rub through a sieve. Place over the fire again and add 1 1/2 tablespoonfuls of rice flour, which has been dissolved in a little water. Let it come to a boil, when it is ready to serve. Celery soup. Boil 1 small cupful of rice in 3 pints of milk, or 2 pints of milk and 1 of cream, until it is tender. Then rub it through a sieve and add 1 quart of veal stock, salt, cayenne, and 3 heads of celery, the white stalks only, which have been previously grated. Boil until the celery is tender. Bisque of prawns or shrimps. Boil 3 dozen prawns 20 minutes in salted water to cover them. Meanwhile, in 2 small tablespoonfuls of butter, fry an onion and a carrot sliced, and a small piece of salt pork chopped. Take the prawns out of the boiling water and add it to the fried mixture with salt, pepper, a bunch of sweet herbs, and 1/2 the prawns added again. Simmer 1 hour. Pound the shells of the prawns in a mortar with a little butter to form a smooth paste. Stir this into the soup and boil 20 minutes. Strain through a sieve. Add 1 quart of milk and 1 teaspoonful of cornstarch stirred into a little of the cold milk. Let it boil up and serve. It should be as thick as rich cream. Lobster soup. Pick the meat from a 5-pound lobster and pound it in a mortar, adding from time to time a little milk or cream. When perfectly smooth, add 2 teaspoonfuls of salt, 1 tablespoonful of chopped parsley, if liked, cayenne, and mace. Take out enough to make a dozen small balls. Mix this with the yolk of an egg and fry it in butter. Mix the rest of the pounded lobster with 2 quarts of milk and rub through a sieve. Put this in a saucepan and simmer 10 minutes. Add 2 ounces of butter and stir until melted and smooth. Pour over the fried balls in the tureen and serve very hot. Venison soup. Cut 6 pounds of lean venison into medium-sized pieces and place in a soup kettle with 2 gallons of cold water, to which add 2 dozen cloves and 4 blades of mace. Boil slowly 3 hours. Then add 2 pounds of venison, cut into pieces about an inch square, and 1 dozen force meatballs. Boil for 30 minutes. Then season with salt, pepper, cayenne, and half a glass of lime juice, letting the soup cook 10 minutes longer. It should be served in hot bowls, in each of which is poured a half glass of port before serving. Crisp croutons may be added. Puree of venison. Cut up the remains of venison that has been roasted for a former dinner. Put a few slices of ham into a stewpan, then the venison, 2 whole onions, a blade of mace, 2 quarts of stock, and a small piece of a sprig of thyme, parsley, and 2 cloves. Set it on the stove to simmer 2 hours or more. Strain it off and pull all the meat to pieces. Pound it with the lean ham that was boiled with it, the crust of 2 French rolls which have been soaked in consomme. Rub the whole through a colander with a glass of claret or port and enough consomme to bring it to the consistency of cream. Put it back on the fire in a double boiler. Stir a little butter into it and serve with bread fried in dice. Clear soup stock. To 4 pounds of beef, add 6 quarts of cold water and place over the fire. Just before it boils, skim it carefully. Then add 2 cups of cold water and skim again, repeating this for a third skimming. Allow it to simmer slowly for 3 hours, then add the vegetables. 8 ounces each of cut-up carrots, onions, and turnips, and 3 ounces of celery with salt and pepper. Simmer 3 hours longer. The stock should be strained before using, and while cooking it should not be allowed to boil. Daniel Webster's chowder. Fry with some slices of pork, 4 tablespoonfuls of sliced onions, to a light brown. Put them in a deep iron pot with 6 pounds of cod, sliced, 1 quart of boiled mashed potatoes, 1 pound and a half of broken sea biscuit, 50 oysters, 1 teaspoonful of thyme, 1 teaspoonful of summer savory, 1/2 a bottle of mushroom catsup, 1 bottle of port or claret, 1/2 a nutmeg, 1 dozen cloves, a little mace and allspice, 1/2 a lemon sliced, pepper, and salt. Cover with 1 inch of water and cook slowly until done. Scots chowder. Cover the bottom of a deep pot with slices of pork cut very thin. Add a layer of fish sliced and seasoned with salt and pepper, a layer of onions parboiled and quartered, a layer of tomatoes sliced and seasoned, a layer of thickly sliced potatoes, and a layer of broken sea biscuit. Repeat the layers until the pot is filled. Just cover the fish with water and cook 1 hour very slowly. Add 1 pint of claret, cook 1/2 hour longer, and serve. Marblehead chowder. Cut 1/2 pound of salt pork into dice and place 2/3 of it in a deep saucepan. Fry a light brown. Remove it, and in the fat fry 2 large onions sliced. Cover the bottom of the pot with slices of raw cod or bass mixed with some of the fried pork and onions. On this place another layer of sliced fish mixed with a few pieces of raw pork and slices of raw onion, salt and pepper. Over this a layer of sliced raw potatoes. Repeat these layers until the pot is about 2/3 full, when the mixture should be covered with warm water, or preferably a stock made of the heads and tails of the fish. After the chowder comes to a boil, let it cook for 45 minutes. Then add some broken sea biscuit and boil 15 minutes longer. In another saucepan, place a quart of milk and heat it to the boiling point. Then stir into it 2 ounces of flour rubbed into 2 ounces of butter. When it thickens a little, pour it over the chowder and serve. The recipe will take about 4 pounds of fish, 1/2 pound of pork, 6 onions, 6 potatoes, 4 sea biscuits, 2 ounces each of butter and flour, and a quart of milk. Clam chowder 1. Have 100 clams still in the shell. Boil them in a quart of water until the shells open. Take the clams out of the kettle, saving the water in which they were boiled. Remove them from the shells, discarding all but the soft part. Take 6 slices of salt pork and cut into dice. Fry until crisp and a light brown. Remove from the saucepan, and in the fat fry 4 onions sliced. Then add the water strained from the clams and the fried pork. To this add 6 potatoes cut in small pieces and 2 green peppers chopped or finely sliced. Boil the mixture 15 minutes before putting in the clams and 4 sea biscuits, broken into pieces. Then boil for 15 minutes longer and add a quart of milk. Have 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs rubbed into 4 ounces of butter. Stir this in as the chowder heats after the milk has been added. When it boils, it is ready to serve. Clam chowder 2. In a saucepan, fry 2 slices of salt pork, and when brown, add 4 potatoes and 4 onions cut up. Fry 10 minutes, and add 3 pints of water, salt, and pepper. Boil for 1/2 hour. Then add 1 quart of clams from which the tough portions have been removed. Also 2 sea biscuits which have been soaked until they are soft. Cook 10 minutes. For this recipe, Canned clams may be used. Force meatballs for chowder. Take the meat of a good-sized crab, a tumblerful of shrimps, and a clove of garlic. Chop all very fine and make into small force meatballs with a beaten egg. Fry them a light brown in butter, and serve in any fish chowder or soup. End of Part 1. Part 2 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Fish. Oysters à la Maréchal. Stew very gently in 4 ounces of butter some thinly sliced truffles and mushrooms. After cooking 10 minutes, add salt, white pepper, cayenne, and mace. Stir in 4 large tablespoonfuls of flour and mix well together while it thickens. Put in the liquor of the oysters which has been scalded and skimmed. Then add milk, boiling, enough to make it as thick as cream. Take from the fire and stir in the yolks of 4 eggs beaten well, with the juice of a lime and a tablespoonful of water. Cover each oyster thickly with some of the mixture and allow it to cool. Then roll twice in beaten egg and breadcrumbs. Fry to a light brown in butter and serve very hot. Toasted angels. Sprinkle cayenne and a few drops of lime juice over as many large oysters as are required. Then wrap each oyster in a thin strip of bacon or fat salt pork. Fasten with a wooden toothpick and broil until the bacon is crisp. Serve very hot on squares of buttered toast. Oyster pâtés. Rub together 1 ounce of butter and 1 teaspoonful of flour. Melt this in a saucepan and add salt, mace, and cayenne. Stir gently a few minutes until smooth. Then add slowly 4 tablespoonfuls of cream. Strain 2 dozen oysters and add the liquor very slowly, stirring all the time. When it boils up, put in the oysters. Cook 3 minutes and fill the pâté shells. Serve very hot. Scalloped clams. Wash clean 100 clams. Use soft part whole and the tough part chopped fine. Put a layer on the bottom of a buttered baking dish. Season with salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little mace, and sprinkle over plenty of stale breadcrumbs and a quantity of bits of butter. Repeat the layers until the dish is full. Put plenty of butter on top and pour in a cup of the water from the clams. Bake in a moderate oven 1 hour, and when half done, pour in a tumblerful of sherry. Shrimp or oyster curry. Melt 4 ounces of butter and fry in it 4 young onions and a clove of garlic chopped. Add the juice of 2 limes. Stir into this 1 teaspoonful of cornstarch, 2 tablespoonfuls of curry powder, and half a cup of cream with salt, pepper, and cayenne. Stir this rapidly over the fire until very thick. Thin with milk until it is the proper consistency, then add a large cup of picked shrimps and as many oysters. Cook 2 minutes after it boils. Shrimps à la Bordelaise. Place 2 tablespoonfuls of butter and 1 of flour in a saucepan and brown over the fire. Stir into this 1 cup of stock and add 2 tablespoonfuls of finely chopped raw ham, a slice of onion, 1 tablespoonful of chopped parsley. Simmer for 10 or 15 minutes. Strain the same and add to it a cup of shrimps. Simmer again for a few moments, and add a teaspoonful of tomato or mushroom catsup. Season with salt and pepper, and serve in timbale cases. Shrimps with tomato. Stew half a dozen large tomatoes with a tablespoonful of anchovy sauce, a piece of butter, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Put this through a sieve until it is very smooth. Fill a baking dish with picked shrimps, pour the tomato over them, sprinkle with breadcrumbs and bits of butter, and bake until brown. Sauté of shrimps. Melt a piece of butter in a stew pan with a little flour, salt, and cayenne. Just as it turns dark, put in a glass of white wine, a pound of picked shrimps, a little lemon juice, and, if liked, a bit of anchovy sauce. Take from the fire and stir in the well-beaten yolks of 2 eggs. Pour into cup-shaped pieces of fried bread and serve very hot. Crab a la Creole. Fry in 4 ounces of butter 4 young onions, 1 clove of garlic, and 2 green peppers, all chopped fine. Cook until soft and add 1 tomato cut up, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Stew until smooth and add 1 teaspoonful of flour, a little cream or rich milk, and the meat picked from 2 crabs. Boil a few moments and serve with buttered toast. Sole à la Normandie. Take a large sole, one without a roe. Remove the back skin and with a sharp knife very carefully cut out the side fins. Lay it on the dish in which it is to be served, one that may be placed in the oven. Brush the fish with melted butter. Insert in the flesh of the fish some small slices of truffle. Sprinkle it with salt, white pepper, a very little mace, and dust it all over with fine crumbs. Pour around it a tumbler of good white wine. Place in a moderate oven and cook until nearly done, 20 minutes or longer, if the fish be large. Take it out and put around the edge of the dish a row of croutons, brushing them with the white of an egg to make them adhere to the dish. Then scatter over and around the fish a small can of mushrooms, sliced, oysters, mussels, picked shrimps, and some quenelles. Add a little more melted butter and a few more crumbs. Add more white wine and put back in the oven for 5 minutes. Fillet of sole à la Bohemian. Cut a sole or flounder into 4 fillets. Roll each one up, stuffing with a mixture of sal piquant sauce. Roll around each a thin slice of pork and fasten with a skewer. Stand on end in a baking pan and put a small piece of butter and a slice of lemon on each and bake until done. Fry together for 5 minutes chopped shallots, parsley, chervil, herbs, butter, salt, and cayenne. Take from the fire and stir in a little lime juice and anchovy sauce. Baked sole. Skin the slack side of the fish and lay in a baking pan. Brush with beaten egg, sprinkle with breadcrumbs, and pour over them some melted butter. Cover the fish with a layer of thin slices of pork or bacon. Add 1/2 pint of water and bake half an hour. To make the sauce, take the liquor from the baking pan, add to it salt, pepper, cayenne, the juice of 1 lime, a wine glass of sherry, a tablespoonful of mushroom or walnut catsup, and a piece of butter the size of an egg with a little flour rubbed into it. Allow it to boil once and pour over the fish. Flounders à la Magouze. Place several fish into a baking pan with a glass of white wine, salt, pepper, and an ounce of butter. While they are cooking, break 3 eggs into half a pint of cream and beat until it is light. When the fish is done, remove them from the pan and stir the eggs and cream into the gravy. Simmer for 2 minutes and pour over the fish, serving at once. Salmon a la Melville. Put slices of salmon into a baking pan with a little white wine and water. Sprinkle with salt and bits of butter. Place in the oven and bake for 15 minutes. For a sauce, blanch some very finely chopped young onions. Put them in a saucepan with a wineglass of white wine, salt, cayenne, a cup of picked shrimps, a lemon cut in thin slices, and a tablespoonful of Worcestershire sauce. Then add a piece of butter the size of a walnut, rolled in a very little flour. Remove from the fire and stir in the yolks of 2 eggs. Pour the sauce over the fish and serve. Stewed haddock. Lay pieces of fish in a pan with the skin side up. Sprinkle with salt and cayenne and cover tightly, allowing the fish to stew in its juice for 20 minutes. Then add 1/4 pound of butter rolled in flour and 1/4 glass of wine. Stir the liquor and simmer for a few minutes, when it is ready to serve. No water should be used. Bacalhau à la Viscaina. Soak half a salt codfish overnight. Put in a saucepan 1/2 cup of olive oil and 2 large onions cut in bits. When browned, add 2 large tomatoes cut up. Stew slowly for 15 minutes, adding a little black pepper. Put in the fish picked to pieces and cook slowly half an hour. Serve on a platter with some fried whole green peppers on top. Baked sardines. Remove the skins from large boned sardines and heat in the oven on strips of toast. Make a sauce as follows. Pour the oil from the sardines into a saucepan and heat it well. Then stir in an ounce of flour, adding a small cup of hot water. Season this with a teaspoonful of Worcestershire sauce, salt, and paprika. Beat the yolk of an egg with a teaspoonful of vinegar and 1 of mustard. Stir this into the sauce after it is removed from the fire. Pour over the sardines and serve. Sardines with cheese. Drain the sardines and lay them on strips of toast or crisply fried bread. Cover thickly with Parmesan cheese and bake in a hot oven until light brown in color. Remove and sprinkle with chopped parsley and pour over all plenty of lemon juice. Serve very hot. Scalloped fish roe. Boil 3 large roes in water with a very little vinegar for 10 minutes. Remove from the fire and plunge into cold water. Wipe the roe dry and break into bits without crushing. Have ready the yolks of 3 hard-boiled eggs. Mash them into a cup of drawn butter with salt, pepper, chopped parsley, a teaspoonful of anchovy paste, the juice of half a lemon, and a cup of breadcrumbs. Mix very lightly with the broken fish roe. Place in a baking dish, cover with breadcrumbs and bits of butter, and brown in the oven. Kedgeree. Boil 2 tablespoonfuls of rice and drain it as dry as possible. Have ready a cupful of cooked fish of any sort broken into pieces. Mix it thoroughly with the rice and heat over the fire. Season with salt and pepper. Beat an egg lightly and stir into it. Serve at once. Bouillabaisse. The fish used for bouillabaisse may be any kind of firm white fish, and for the following recipe about 2 pounds are required. Heat in a soup kettle 4 tablespoonfuls of olive oil, and fry in it 2 large onions sliced, and 2 cloves of garlic. Add the fish cut into bits, and just cover the mixture with warm water. Then add salt, pepper, half of a bay leaf, 2 large tomatoes peeled and chopped, the juice of half a lemon, and 1 cup of white wine. Cook over a brisk fire 12 minutes, or until the liquor is reduced 1/3. Add 1 tablespoonful of chopped parsley and a pinch of saffron. Cook 2 minutes. Pour the bouillabaisse over slices of French bread. End of Part 2. Part 3 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Entrees. Sweetbreads with mushrooms. Lay half a dozen sweetbreads in cold water for 12 hours, changing the water several times. Then boil them 5 minutes, drop into cold water. Remove the skin and lard with fat bacon. Put them in a saucepan with a pint of stock, 2 small onions and 1 carrot chopped, a teaspoonful of minced parsley, salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little mace. Stew until tender. Serve with a mushroom sauce made as follows. Take a small bottle of mushrooms or 1 dozen fresh mushrooms, sliced, and boil them 5 minutes in water and lime juice. Drain and place in a stew pan with 2 ounces of butter, 1 ounce of flour, and a pint of well-seasoned stock or gravy. Cook until the sauce is reduced 1/2. Pour over the hot sweetbreads. Terrapin. Boil the terrapin for 1 hour and clean carefully. Rub into a paste the yolks of 6 hard-boiled eggs, half the white of 1 egg chopped, 1 tablespoonful of butter, 1 teaspoonful of flour, 3 whole cloves, salt, pepper, cayenne, and mace. Place the terrapin into a stew pan with a glass of sherry or Madeira and the prepared paste. Cook slowly for 20 minutes. Add 3 glasses of sherry and Madeira and allow it to boil once, when it is ready to serve. Frogs à la poulette. Joint the hind legs and backs of 12 frogs. Put in a closely covered saucepan with some truffles, a small can of mushrooms sliced, a glass of white wine, salt, white pepper, cayenne, mace, and 4 ounces of butter. Stew gently 15 minutes, stirring once or twice. If then tender, add 1 teaspoonful cornstarch, rubbed into 1 ounce of butter. Let it cook 2 minutes. Take from the fire and stir in the yolks of 6 eggs, beaten well with 1/2 cup of cream. Place this mixture where it will keep hot without cooking. Cut the crust from a loaf of bread, scoop out the center, brush with butter, and brown in the oven. Pour the frog's legs and sauce into the bread cup. Garnish with mushrooms and truffles. Calf's head en tortue. Simmer a calf's head for 2 hours. Tie the brains in a cloth, put them in the saucepan with the head, and cook 2 hours longer. Then extract the bones and cut the meat in pieces. Return it to the saucepan without the brains, adding 2 ounces of butter, 2 dozen stoned olives, 1 dozen cloves, salt, pepper, cayenne, and a cup of white wine. Cook for 1 hour, then add the brains cut in bits, the shaved peel and piece of 1 lemon, and 3 hard-boiled eggs sliced. Cook 30 minutes. Thicken the sauce with flour rubbed into butter and serve with the calf's head. Chops a la reine. Trim 12 lamb chops very closely and fry lightly in 6 ounces of butter. Remove them and in the same butter place 2 onions, sliced, 4 green peppers, minced, 1 can of mushrooms, minced, and 2 stalks of celery, chopped, salt, pepper, cayenne, and the juice of a lime. Cook until these ingredients are soft. Stir in 6 ounces of flour. Then add 2 cups of milk and cook until the mixture is thick and smooth. Dust a plate with cracker crumbs, and on this place a spoonful of the fried mixture. Place a chop on top of this, cover it with another spoonful of the mixture, and dust with cracker crumbs. Repeat with each chop, and, when cold, roll each in beaten egg and cracker crumbs, and fry a light brown. Calf's feet a la Marechal. Boil 4 calf's feet until tender. Cut into inch pieces and fry in 4 ounces of butter with 2 onions, a little garlic, 2 green peppers, and some mushrooms chopped fine, seasoning all with salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little mace. Stir in 4 ounces of flour and add boiling milk, enough to make the texture as thick as rich cream. Put in the calf's feet and mix all well together. Then remove from the fire and beat in the yolks of 2 eggs which have been mixed with the juice of a lime and a tablespoonful of water. Pour the whole into a buttered pan and set aside to cool. When cold, cut into slices, brush with egg and breadcrumbs, and fry in butter until a light brown. Puree of chestnuts with chops. Boil chestnuts in salted water for 20 minutes. Shell them, season with salt and pepper, add a piece of butter and wet with milk. Mash through a colander and heap lightly on a platter, arranging broiled chops around the puree. Lamb chops a la Nesselrode. Trim carefully 1 dozen young lamb chops. Fry in butter 3 tablespoonfuls of marrow, some chopped mushrooms and shallots. Then add a glass of sherry and stir it well, before adding also a cup of rice, 4 cups of stock, several sweet chili peppers chopped, and some salt. Cook for half an hour or until pasty. Pour it out in a pan to the thickness of a half an inch and let cool. Then with a biscuit cutter, cut it into rounds about the size of a chop. On each one of these rounds place a chop and cover the top with bechamel sauce. When cold, dip in egg and breadcrumbs and fry a light brown. A good recipe for the bechamel sauce is the following: 1 ounce of butter browned with 1 ounce of flour. To this add half a glass of sherry, some finely chopped truffles, 1 cup and a half of stock, salt and pepper, and cook for 10 minutes. Add the juice of a lime. Take from the fire and stir in the well-beaten yolks of 2 eggs. Devil chops. Make a dressing of the following ingredients mixed together: 1 ounce of butter, 1 teaspoonful of made mustard, 1/2 teaspoonful of French mustard, 1 teaspoonful of grated horseradish, 1 teaspoonful of chutney, a little chili vinegar, the juice of 1 lime, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Rub this on the chops and broil rare. Serve the remaining sauce over them in a very hot dish. Lamb cutlets duchesse. Fry 1 dozen lamb chops in butter and set aside to cool. Put in a stewpan 2 ounces of butter with half a can of mushrooms, 1 small onion, and a teaspoonful of parsley, all minced fine, salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little mace. Cook this gently for 10 minutes and add a cup of milk thickened with flour and butter, the juice of a lemon, and 1 teaspoonful of sugar. Cook a few minutes. Take from the fire and add the yolks of 4 eggs well beaten. Cover the chops with this and set aside to cool. Brush them with the well-beaten yolk of an egg, sprinkle with fine breadcrumbs, and fry in butter to a light brown. Serve with green peas in the center of the dish. Lamb cutlets a la Conde. Lard lamb cutlets with strips of truffle, anchovy, and gherkin. Make a dressing of breadcrumbs, mushrooms, capers, chives, a little shallot chopped very fine, pepper, salt, and butter. Put this on each side of the cutlets and cover with crepinette. Broil or fry to a light brown and dust over with very fine browned breadcrumbs. Serve with a browned veal gravy and sliced lemon. Eggs with tomatoes. Fry in 2 ounces of butter 2 small dry onions and 2 green peppers chopped. Add half a dozen tomatoes peeled and cut up, salt, and pepper. Simmer 15 minutes. Add the corn cut from half a dozen ears and cook 15 minutes longer. Pour the mixture into a baking dish and break over it 6 eggs. Place in the oven until set. Macaroni a la Rossini. Cook a pint or less of macaroni in well-salted water. Drain and put into a stewpan with a little good gravy. Simmer very slowly until the gravy is all absorbed, shaking the pan occasionally. Put a layer of the macaroni in a baking dish, sprinkle with grated Parmesan cheese and sliced truffles mixed with a little good sauce Espagnole. Fill the dish and on the top layer put truffles. Place in the oven a few minutes and serve with grated Parmesan cheese on a separate dish. Timbale of macaroni for 12 persons. Boil 1/2 pound of macaroni in water for 5 minutes. Cut in inch-length pieces and simmer for 20 minutes in 1 quart of milk, being careful that it does not boil. Season with salt, pepper, mace, and cayenne. Add 1 cup of cream, stir until very smooth. Add the beaten yolks of 8 eggs and 1 can of mushrooms sliced. Stir well and then add the macaroni with 1 pound of sweetbreads cut in small pieces and 2 dozen Eastern oysters. Let this cool, then cover with pastry and bake in the oven until brown. End of Part 3. Part 4 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Chicken and Game. Chicken Portuguese. Truss 2 young chickens as though for roasting. Lay on the bottom of a large stewpan the rind of a piece of pork, and on this place the chicken. Add 4 ounces of butter, a head of celery chopped, 2 onions sliced, 3 small carrots sliced, 2 chili peppers cut up, and the halves of 2 bell peppers from which the seeds have been removed. Season with salt, cayenne, thyme, and a few sweet herbs. Cover and cook quickly for 40 minutes, moistening from time to time with a spoonful of stock or gravy. Then add 2 large tomatoes sliced and cook 20 minutes longer. Serve the chicken with the sauce poured over it. Chicken with oysters. Stuff a young chicken with oyster and a few breadcrumbs, seasoned with salt, pepper, and butter. Truss the fowl, place it in a tin pail with a tight cover. Stand the pail in a kettle of boiling water and leave on the fire 1 hour and a half. Remove the chicken and place in a dish. Pour the gravy into a saucepan, adding 2 dozen oysters, 2 hard-boiled eggs, chopped, a wineglass of cream, and 1 ounce of butter, into which has been rubbed a teaspoonful of cornstarch. Boil for a few minutes and pour over the chicken. This is an excellent way to cook a young turkey. Cazuela. Cut a chicken into small pieces and fry it with a clove of garlic in a large tablespoonful of lard for 10 minutes. Then add 1 quart of water, half a cupful each of green peas, string beans, and grains of corn, and boil 1 1/2 hours. Add 3 potatoes cut into bits, 1 tablespoonful of rice, salt, pepper, and the white of 1 egg. Boil for 3/4 of an hour longer, then remove from the fire. In a tureen, mix 1 mashed potato with the yolk of the egg and a tablespoonful of vinegar. Strain the broth slowly into this and mix thoroughly before adding the chicken and other ingredients. Fried chicken, Maryland style. Cut up a chicken and season with salt, pepper, and a little mace. Dip the pieces into beaten egg, then roll in flour and fry in lard and butter until brown. Take out the chicken and in the pan put a large piece of butter with a little flour. As soon as it froths up, stir in milk until thick. Let it boil a minute and pour over the chicken. Chicken with rice. Cut up a chicken and stew gently for 10 minutes in a little water. Add 2 ounces of butter, salt, pepper, mace, and a green pepper, chopped very fine. Stew until done. Make a form of boiled rice around a dish and lay the chicken in the middle of it. Add to the sauce a good piece of butter with a teaspoonful of flour rubbed into it and boil 2 minutes. Take from the fire and stir in the yolk of 3 eggs beaten with a half cup of rich cream. Pour over the chicken and serve. Chicken with spaghetti. Prepare the spaghetti by boiling about 3 pounds in salted water for 20 minutes. Stew a chicken in water until tender and pick it to pieces, adding enough of the gravy to make a quart. Into this put 4 sliced onions that have been fried in 2 ounces of butter and 1 quart of tomatoes. Stew for 15 minutes. Place a layer of spaghetti on a platter and sprinkle with grated Parmesan cheese. Pour over some of the chicken sauce and repeat the layers, putting the best of the chicken on top. Quail with celery. Cut 6 quail in halves and cover them with water in a stew pan, adding strips of salt pork, some finely chopped celery, salt, and pepper. Cook until done. Remove the birds and strain the liquor. Add to it 2 ounces of flour rubbed into 2 ounces of butter, the remainder of the head of celery grated, and 2 cups of milk. When it thickens, pour over the birds and serve very hot. Pheasant à la Savarin. Place on the bottom of a roasting pan 2 slices of bread cut 2 inches thick. Spread over this the pounded liver and heart of the bird, with an anchovy, a bit of ham, and 2 truffles minced. On this lay the pheasant and roast until done. Serve on the cooked bread. Nothing but the finest Burgundy should be served with this. Quail and onion. To each quail allow one good-sized onion, sliced, and half a glass each of oil and vinegar. Stew in a covered pot until the birds are tender. Season with salt and pepper, and serve with any good sauce. Salmi of duck with olives. Roast for 8 minutes 2 sprig-tail ducks. Take out and cut the meat from the bones. Break up the bones. Cover with water in a saucepan and cook with a dozen cloves, 1 onion, and some chopped celery to make a gravy. When done, strain it off. To this gravy add the meat, 2 ounces of butter, salt, pepper, cayenne, 1/2 head of celery cut in strips, 1 teaspoonful of currant jelly, and 1 dozen stoned olives. Cook gently 10 minutes, stirring it well until smooth. Add a piece of butter rolled in brown flour. Stew 5 minutes and serve very hot. Stewed squabs. Make a stuffing of the livers and hearts of 6 birds chopped fine, with a little butter, chopped pork, the yolk of an egg, salt, cayenne, and a little lemon. Stuff the squabs with the above. Put them in a stew pan and cover with stock and stew 1/2 hour. Take out the birds, add salt, cayenne, 3 tablespoonfuls of mushroom ketchup, 1 tablespoonful of Worcestershire sauce, 1 tablespoonful of lime juice, a large glass of port or sherry, and 2 ounces of butter mixed with 3 tablespoonfuls of browned flour. Return the birds to the sauce for 10 minutes. Fry some thick slices of bread, place a bird on each, and pour the sauce over them. End of Part 4. Part 5 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Meats. Yorkshire steaks. Fry in butter several small tenderloin steaks with 2 onions sliced and 1 cucumber sliced. When well browned, add a pint of stock, salt, pepper, and cayenne, and 1 teaspoonful of made mustard. Simmer an hour or longer. Fillet of beef à la Rossini. Braise a larded fillet of beef with what vegetables are in season. Put in a saucepan and moisten while cooking with a bottle of good claret or sherry. When done, garnish the meat with macaroni prepared as follows. Boil 1/2 pound of macaroni, cut into 3-inch lengths, and put in a saucepan with some sliced mushrooms, 1/2 pint of good stock, 3 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese, and a pat of butter. Season with salt and pepper. Toss over the fire until well mixed, and serve around the beef. Strain the vegetables out of the gravy and pour over the beef. Yorkshire pudding. This is to be served with roast beef, and it should be baked in the pan of drippings in which the beef is cooked. Mix a cup of flour with a cup of milk, salt, and 1 egg beaten. Bake quickly and serve at once. Cold roast beef, stewed. Cut the remains of a cold roast into pieces. Flour the pieces and fry in butter until brown. Then put them into a saucepan with a cup of stock, a glass of port, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Simmer 5 minutes and add 1 tablespoonful of lime juice before serving. Lobscouse. Soak 4 thick slices of corned beef in fresh water for 2 hours. Fry 4 slices of salt pork or bacon. In the fat, fry 4 sliced onions to a light brown. Place in a stew pan the beef, onions, and pork or bacon. Add a dozen sliced potatoes, cover with water, and season highly with pepper. Cover and stew gently until the meat is tender. Then break into the stew pan 4 sea biscuits. Cook for 5 minutes longer. The liquor may be thickened a little more with a tablespoonful of flour mixed with a little cold water. Perchero. Place 5 pounds of beef in a large pot half filled with water. Boil for 3 hours, having seasoned well with salt and pepper. Then add a large piece of pumpkin cut in pieces, a pint of string beans, a cup of corn, a large onion sliced, a carrot and a turnip diced, and a bell pepper minced. Simmer for half an hour. Then add half a cup of rice and 1 teaspoonful of saffron. Cook for half an hour longer. In another saucepan boil a cabbage, and in a third pan stew some peeled apples and bananas cut up. Put the meat in the center of a platter and place the mixed fruits and vegetables around it. Stewed cold mutton or beef. Place in a saucepan 3 onions sliced, a carrot and a potato diced, salt, pepper, a teaspoonful of lime juice or vinegar, with thin slices of cold meat. Cover closely and simmer for 1 hour. Add half a cup of cold water and simmer 1 hour longer. Season with a tablespoonful of Worcestershire and thicken the gravy with an ounce of flour rubbed into butter. Lamb with macaroni. Cover the bottom of a baking pan with slices of bacon. Place on them a breast of young lamb and cover it with slices of bacon and thin slices of a peeled lemon. Season with salt and pepper. Add a small onion minced and a cup of stock. Cover and bake slowly for 2 hours. Boil half a cup of macaroni in gravy, to which a few peeled tomatoes may be added. When tender, place it on a serving dish, lay the lamb on it, and pour over all the gravy which may be thickened with a little flour. Stewed fresh tongue. Soak a fresh tongue in cold water for 1 hour, then boil it 3 hours and remove the skin. Place the tongue in a stew pan with half a head of celery, 1 turnip, 1 carrot and 2 onions cut in small pieces, 1 dozen cloves, salt and cayenne. Simmer for 1 1/2 hours. Take out the tongue and add to the gravy 1 tablespoonful of made mustard, 1 of Worcestershire sauce, 3 tablespoonfuls of mushroom ketchup, 3 pickled gherkins chopped, 1 glass of port or red wine, and 2 ounces of butter, creamed with 3 ounces of browned flour. Cook until smooth. Return the tongue to the sauce and simmer half an hour. Pork pie. Cut into small pieces enough pork to fill a baking dish. Season it with salt, pepper, and mace. Use no water. Cover the meat with a thick pastry crust and bake in a slow oven for 2 hours. Make a gravy of the bones and scraps of the pork, well seasoned, and pour into the pie after it is baked. To barbecue a pig, very old dish. Dress a pig of 10 weeks old as if to roast. Make a stuffing of the liver, 2 anchovies, and sage leaves all chopped small, breadcrumbs, 4 ounces of butter, salt, cayenne, and a half pint of red wine. Stuff and sew the pig up. Roast at an open fire. Put in the dripping pan 3 bottles or more of red wine. Baste the pig frequently, and when almost done, put in the pan close to the fire 2 loaves of bread. Stand the pig in the dish for serving and put a lemon in his mouth. Place one of the loaves of bread on each side. To the gravy in the pan add 1 anchovy, 1/2 lemon, and a few sweet herbs, all chopped fine. Boil it a few minutes and pour over the pig. Lay slices of lemon and barberries around the dish. To boil a ham. Soak a ham for 1 hour and clean with a brush. Put it in a kettle with plenty of cold water, and after it boils, cook 7 hours. Skim well and always replenish with boiling water. After it has boiled 3 hours, add half a handful of whole cloves, and at the end of 5 hours, add 1½ pints of vinegar. After boiling, skin the ham, sprinkle it with crumbs, stick with cloves, and roast in a moderate oven 30 minutes, basting with a liquor of half vinegar and half water. Mexican tripe. Dip a thick honeycomb piece of tripe in butter, then in crumbs, and broil over a clear fire until well done, sprinkling over it whilst cooking 3 or 4 finely chopped green chilies. Melt in a hot soup plate 1 ounce of butter, adding salt, pepper, and cayenne, and 1 teaspoonful of made mustard. Rub smooth and add 1/2 teaspoonful of vinegar, 1 tablespoonful of Worcestershire sauce, and the juice of 1 small lime. Lay the tripe in this sauce as soon as it is removed from the fire. Serve with buttered toast. An excellent prelude to this dish is a plate of onion soup. Spanish bacon on toast. Fry a crisp brown 12 slices of bacon. Remove the bacon from the frying pan, leaving some of the fat. Into this stir 2 tablespoonfuls of flour and a cup of milk, a small onion minced, and a dash of pepper. Cook until it is smooth. Have 6 slices of toast ready. On each place 2 slices of the fried bacon, and on each a slice of raw tomato. Pour the sauce over the toast and bacon and tomato and serve very hot. End of Part 5. Part 6 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Sauces. Sauce for canvasback duck. Melt together in a hot soup plate 1 ounce of butter and an equal amount of currant jelly. Add the juice of a lime, a glass of sherry, and a small cupful of finely chopped celery. Season with salt, pepper, and cayenne. Sauce for wild fowl. Take 1 shallot chopped, salt, cayenne, mace, a glass of port or claret, 1 tablespoonful of Worcestershire sauce, 1 tablespoonful of mushroom ketchup, the rind of 1/2 lime, and 1 tablespoonful of lime juice. Boil these ingredients for 5 minutes. Strain the liquor and add to any gravy. Hollandaise sauce. Heat a bowl with boiling water and wipe dry. In it, beat 1/4 cup of butter to a cream. Add the yolks of 2 raw eggs, 1 at a time, beating until smooth. Then add a tablespoonful of lemon juice, salt and cayenne, and beat the mixture with a fork or an egg beater for 5 minutes. Place the bowl in boiling water. Stir into the sauce 2 tablespoonfuls of boiling water, and beat until the sauce is smooth and thick as mayonnaise. Parsley butter. Beat 3 tablespoonfuls of butter to a cream. Add half a tablespoonful of lemon juice and 1 of chopped parsley, half a teaspoonful of salt. Beat all together several minutes when it is ready for use. An excellent dressing for fried or boiled fish. Green sauce. Mix in a bowl a tablespoonful each of finely chopped parsley and onion with 1 tablespoonful of tarragon vinegar and 1 of cider vinegar. Season with salt, pepper, and cayenne. Egg sauce. Beat 2 ounces of butter to a froth. Mix into it 1 tablespoonful of flour and the yolk of 1 egg. Pour a cup of hot water in this batter, stirring constantly. Heat over the fire until it is thick and smooth, but be careful not to boil. Just before serving, stir in 2 hard-boiled eggs, finely chopped. Celery sauce. Put in a stewpan with salt, cayenne, and a blade of mace, 3 grated heads of celery. Cover with boiling water. Boil 10 minutes and drain. Return to the fire with enough veal stock to cover the celery and stew half an hour. Then add 2 ounces of butter rolled in flour and half a cup of cream. Shake over the fire a minute or two and serve at once. Devil for boiled ham or fowl. Put in a saucepan half a teacupful of soup stock, 3 ounces of butter, 1 teaspoonful of salt, 1 teaspoonful of made mustard, 2 teaspoonfuls of French mustard, 2 cloves of garlic chopped fine, 1 onion chopped, 2 green peppers, and 1 pickled gherkin chopped, 1 tomato peeled and cut up, the juice of half a lime, and half a lime cut in thin slices. Simmer for 1 hour, then add the following: 1 tablespoonful of Worcestershire sauce, 1 of imperial sauce, 1 of tarragon vinegar, 2 of bon goût sauce, 2 of mushroom ketchup, 2 of walnut ketchup, and 2 tablespoonfuls of chutney. Add half a pint of sherry and simmer for 15 minutes. This will keep several months. Onion sauce. Boil 3 good-sized onions 1 hour. Drain and put in a stewpan with 1/2 pint of milk and 1 teaspoonful of salt. Simmer for 15 minutes, then rub through a sieve and put back in the pan with 1/2 pint of cream and 1 ounce of butter. Simmer 10 minutes and serve very hot. Garlic sauce. Rub together in a mortar until smooth 2 ounces of butter, 2 cloves of garlic, and 1 teaspoonful of salt. Add a tablespoonful of lime juice and 1/2 a pint of melted butter. Beat until light and smooth, when it is ready to serve. Melted butter. Take 1 pint of milk and 1 teaspoonful of salt. When it boils, stir into it 3 ounces of butter, a little cayenne, and 2 tablespoonfuls of flour rubbed into it. Let it boil 1 minute and serve at once. Salad dressing without oil. Put in a double saucepan the yolks of 3 eggs, 1 teaspoonful of salt, pepper, cayenne, and 1 tablespoonful of dry mustard. Mix well and sift in 2 tablespoonfuls of flour. Add 3 tablespoonfuls of vinegar and 4 of water. Stir until quite smooth. Place over the fire, stirring continually one way. As soon as it thickens, remove from the fire and beat in 3 ounces of butter. Use when cool. End of Part 6. Part 7 of Recipes for Epicures by Joseph Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clariga. Vegetables. Asparagus au Milanaise. Boil large choice asparagus until tender. Put a layer of stalks upon the dish on which they are to be served. Sprinkle with salt, pepper, cayenne, and a little grated Parmesan cheese. Make 3 layers of this and pour over all a little melted butter. Break on top a fresh egg for each person, and put in the oven until set. Serve very hot. To be served individually, 6 stalks may be placed on each dish, covered with cheese and an egg broken over them. Serve after placing in the oven a few moments. Corn au gratin. Score down 12 ears of boiled corn, and with the back of a knife press out the kernels. Put them into a baking dish with a large piece of butter, salt, pepper, a finely chopped green pepper, and a tablespoonful of grated Parmesan or Gruyere cheese. Place in a hot oven until just browned, and serve immediately. Chonfleur au gratin. Boil a large cauliflower 20 minutes in salted water. When tender, drain and put on the dish on which it is to be served. Make a sauce of 2 ounces of butter, 1 ounce of flour, and half a pint of milk, 1 ounce of grated Parmesan cheese, salt, and cayenne. Mix this well, putting in the cheese last. Pour it over the cauliflower and sprinkle more cheese over the top. Set in a hot oven until browned and serve at once. Okra. Cut the stems off of young okra pods and boil in water until the seeds turn red, which should be in half an hour. Drain and toss in a pan with butter, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Potato cream. Boil 6 medium-sized, mealy potatoes, and when soft, press them through a sieve until light and floury. Then beat into them the raw yolks of 6 eggs and a little milk and butter. Season with salt and pepper and sprinkle with finely chopped chervil and thyme, and fine dice of fried bread before serving. Sweet potatoes. Take 6 good-sized sweet potatoes and boil until nearly done. Then peel them and roll in melted butter. Lay in a buttered baking pan. Sprinkle with brown sugar and bake until done. Chili beans. Take 4 cups of red beans, 1 onion, 4 cloves of garlic, cover with water, and cook all day in a covered saucepan. Add a little water from time to time if too dry. Cook slowly 4 red peppers and 5 black peppers with seeds out, 3 black peppers with seeds, 4 cloves of garlic, 4 onions with the hearts taken out, salt, and 1 cup of beef stock. Rub through a sieve. Put in a saucepan 4 tablespoonfuls of marrow. When very hot, add the beans and then the sauce. To boil rice. Have plenty of salted water with the juice of a lime in it. When boiling, add rice that has been washed in 3 waters. Boil fast for 16 minutes. Try a grain, and if done, dash in a glass of cold water. Drain it once through a colander. Cover with a cloth and let stand by the fire for a few minutes, shaking up the colander once or twice. This will make every grain separate. Risotto. Fry 2 chopped onions in butter until light brown in color. Add 1 cup of raw rice and cover with beef stock. As the rice absorbs the stock, add more until done. Then add 2 large tomatoes stewed with a little sugar and highly seasoned. Place on the dish for serving and grate Parmesan cheese over it. End of Part 7. Part 8 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clariga. Salads. Club salad. Boil separately 2 carrots, 2 turnips, and 4 potatoes. When cold, cut the vegetables into dice and mix them together, adding 3 apples peeled and cut into small bits. Toss in a large salad bowl with several olives for garnish. Bits of celery or cold cauliflower may be added. Pour over all a mayonnaise, or if preferred, a French dressing. Another dressing that is excellent with this salad is one made of the yolks of 4 raw eggs, beaten into half a glass of rich cream, which may be either sweet or sour. To this add 1 teaspoonful of salt, 1 of mustard, and a wineglassful of vinegar, blending carefully. Winter salad. Cut the white stalks of a head of celery into small bits. Mix with 2 boiled potatoes cut in dice, 2 or 3 boiled beets cut in dice, a large white onion boiled and cut up, some chopped truffles, anchovies, and stoned olives, a tablespoonful or more of each. Serve with mayonnaise. Cheese straws to serve with salad. Make a paste of 2 ounces of grated Parmesan cheese, 2 ounces of flour, 2 ounces of butter, the yolk of 1 egg, salt, and cayenne. Roll out the paste until about 1/8 of an inch thick. Cut into very narrow strips and place on a buttered tin. Bake 10 minutes in a hot oven. End of Part 8. Part 9 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Desserts and cakes. Mincemeat. Measure carefully and mix together the following ingredients: 2 pounds of roast beef, finely chopped, 2 pounds of chopped beef suet, 2 pounds of chopped peeled apples, 2 pounds of seeded raisins, 2 pounds sultana raisins, 2 pounds of washed currants, 2 pounds of white sugar, 1 pound of citron cut in bits, 1 pound of dried orange peel, 2 nutmegs grated, 3 teaspoonfuls of ground mace, 3 teaspoonfuls of ground cloves, 3 teaspoonfuls of ground cinnamon, 1 teaspoonful of salt, the grated rind and juice of 2 oranges, 1 quart of brandy, 1 quart of sherry, and 1 glass of blackberry jelly. After mixing thoroughly, place the mincemeat in a stone jar and use it from this. Hot zabajone. Beat well together the yolks of 6 eggs and half a cup of sugar. Heat in a double saucepan, being careful to stir only one way. Place in a strainer the shaved peel of 3 oranges. Through this pour slowly into the eggs a quart of champagne. White wine may be substituted, and allow the mixture to thicken. Serve hot in champagne glasses. Frozen zabajone. Mix the same as for hot zabajone, adding another half cup of sugar and a tablespoonful of orange juice. When it is cold, half freeze in a freezer. Then remove and place in paper cases or molds on the ice. Genoise pastry. Beat to a cream half a cup of butter and half a cup of sugar. Break into the cream 3 eggs, one at a time, and mix until smooth. Stir in half a cup of flour. Pour on a buttered tin and bake 10 or 15 minutes. When cold, spread thickly with apricot jam and cover with chocolate icing. Set in the oven a few moments, then put aside to cool. Cut into odd shapes before serving. Omelette Soufflé. Beat to a cream the yolks of 6 eggs, 4 tablespoonfuls of sugar, and the grated rind of half a lemon. Whip the whites of the eggs to a stiff froth. Place in a frying pan over the fire 4 ounces of butter. When it is melted, mix the yolks and whites together and stir quickly into the pan. As soon as the eggs have absorbed the butter, pour them into a buttered baking dish and set in a hot oven for 6 or 7 minutes. Serve at once. Marmalade pudding. Cream half a cup of sugar and 2 teaspoonfuls of butter. Beat into this the yolks of 4 eggs and 1 cup of cream or milk. Add a cup of fine breadcrumbs and the beaten whites of the eggs. Then a cup of orange marmalade or some other fruit marmalade. Pour into a buttered mold and bake 1 hour in a moderate oven. Turn out of the mold and serve with a brandy sauce or cream. Amherst pudding. Line a baking dish with thinly rolled pie crust or puff paste. Fill with the following mixture: a small cup of butter creamed with 2 cups of sugar and beaten up with 4 or 5 eggs. A cupful of finely chopped apple added, with the grated rind and juice of a lemon and a little water. Sprinkle with nutmeg and bake for half an hour in a moderate oven. Brown Betty. Cover the bottom of a baking dish with breadcrumbs, over which place a layer of thinly sliced tart apples. Sprinkle thickly with sugar and small pieces of butter, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Then cover with breadcrumbs and repeat the layers until the dish is filled, having a layer of crumbs sprinkled with bits of butter on top. Then pour over all 3/4 of a cup of molasses thinned with a little hot water. Bake until the apples are tender and the top is well browned. Chocolate pudding. Grate 1/2 pound of baker's chocolate and melt it in half a pint of hot milk. Stir into the milk also half a cup of breadcrumbs, 1 cup of powdered sugar, and the beaten whites of 6 eggs. Wet a melon mold in cold water and pour the mixture into it. Boil 3/4 of an hour. Serve with cream or the following sauce: beat the yolks of 6 eggs very light. Heat a cup of wine and a cup of sugar until the sugar is melted. Remove from the fire and stir in the eggs quickly. Bread and molasses pudding. Butter thickly some slices of bread and lay in a baking dish. Cover them with thick black molasses and bake slowly. The pudding should be served hot with thick cream. Baked bananas. Put into a bowl 3 tablespoonfuls of butter, 6 of sugar, and 3 of wine. Set the bowl in hot water to melt the butter. Peel the fruit and lay it in a baking pan. Pour over it the mixture in the bowl and bake half an hour, basting several times. Hermits. Cream 2 cups of sugar and 1 cup of butter. Add 3 well-beaten eggs and 3 tablespoonfuls of milk. Sift into this 6 cups of flour and a teaspoonful each of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. Add last a cup of chopped raisins. Roll the dough out about 1/4 of an inch thick, cut into small squares, and bake in a quick oven for 12 minutes. Lady Baltimore cake. Cream 1 pound of sugar and half a pound of butter. Beat the yolks and whites of 8 eggs separately and add the beaten yolks to the butter and sugar. Stir in half a pint of milk and 1 pound of flour with 4 teaspoonfuls of baking powder. Flavor with lemon or vanilla and bake in 3 layers. For the filling, boil 3 cups of powdered sugar and 3/4 of a cup of water for 5 minutes. Beat 4 eggs, the yolks and whites together, and into them stir the boiling syrup. Add 2 cups of chopped raisins and 2 cups of almonds, chopped and blanched. Flavor with vanilla and spread thickly between the layers of cake. Cover with white frosting. Silver cake. Beat lightly the whites of 8 eggs. Cream 2 cups of sugar and half a cup of butter. Stir into the eggs, adding 3/4 of a cup of milk. Sift into the batter 3 cups of flour and 1 heaping teaspoonful of baking powder. Bake in a moderate oven. Gold cake. Cream a cup of sugar and 3/4 of a cup of butter. Mix into this the beaten yolk of 8 eggs and half a cup of milk. Last, add 1½ cups of flour with 1 teaspoonful of baking powder. Bake in a long bread tin. Fig filling for cake. Chop together 1 pound of dried figs and 1 cup of seeded raisins. Add the juice and grated rind of a lemon and sugar to taste. Pour over the mixture a cup of water and heat thoroughly, mixing it over the fire. Spread between layers of white cake. Thin gingerbread. Place in a saucepan 1 pint of molasses, 1 cup of butter, 1 teaspoonful of ginger, 1 teaspoonful of soda, and let them boil together for a moment. Then remove from the fire, and when nearly cool, stir in flour enough to make a thick batter or dough. Spread thinly on tins and bake quickly. End of Part 9. Part 10 of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Clarica. Wine cups and punches. Champagne cup 1. Pour on a sliced cucumber, 1 pint of sherry, and 1/2 pint of brandy. Grate the rind of 2 lemons over a little sugar. Add it to the mixture with the juice of 1 lemon and the juice of 3 oranges, half a pint of curacao, 2 bottles of seltzer, 3 bottles of apollinaris, and 3 bottles of champagne. Sweeten to taste and ice well. Champagne cup 2. Mix together 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar, the juice and shaved peel of a lemon, a few slices of cucumbers, 1 wine glass of curacao, 1 quart of apollinaris, and 1 quart of champagne. Pour over a block of ice in a punch bowl. Champagne cup 3. Rub 3 ounces of sugar on lemon peel and put in a punch bowl with the juice of 4 lemons, 1 quart of apollinaris, and 1 quart of orgeat. Beat this well. Then add 1 pint of brandy, half a glass of Jamaica rum, and a glass of maraschino. Strain into a bowl of ice and just before serving, pour in 3 quarts of champagne. Champagne cup 4. 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar rubbed on the peel of a lemon and mixed with the juice of half a lemon, 3 slices of pineapple, 1 wine glass each of maraschino and brandy, and a quart each of apollinaris and champagne. Ice well. Champagne cup 5. Rub 2 ounces of sugar over the peel of an orange. Mix with it the juice of an orange, 2 wine glasses of sherry, 1 wine glass of maraschino, and a quart each of apollinaris and champagne. Add a few slices of cucumber and plenty of ice. Hock cup. Pour over a block of ice in a punch bowl, a wine glass of maraschino, 2 quarts of apollinaris, 2 quarts of sparkling hock, and the juice of 2 lemons. Sweeten with 2 ounces of sugar. Badminton Claret Cup. Rub 6 lumps of sugar on a lemon. Strain the juice of the lemon over the sugar and add a glass of good sherry, 2 sprigs of verbena, a few slices of cucumber, and a quart of claret. Place in the bowl a large piece of ice, and when ready to serve, add a quart of sparkling mineral water. Moselle Cup. Place the following ingredients in a punch bowl with a block of ice: 2 ounces of sugar, the shaved peel of half an orange, 3 peaches sliced, a small pineapple sliced, half a dozen apricots, a wineglass of sherry, a quart of sparkling Moselle, and a quart of Apollinaris. Sauterne Cup. Pour in a punch bowl with ice a quart each of Sauterne, Apollinaris, and champagne, a wineglass of chartreuse, and 2 tablespoonfuls of sugar. Champagne Punch. In a bowl place 1 sliced orange, 1 lime sliced very thin, and the juice of another lime, 1/4 of a pineapple sliced, and 1/4 of a pound of sugar. Let stand 12 hours. Put a large block of ice in a punch bowl, add the above ingredients with a wineglass of maraschino, 2 tumblers of Sauterne, a wineglass of raspberry syrup, and last of all, 1 quart of champagne. A few whole strawberries and a claret glass of Benedictine may also be added. Tea Punch. Slice a whole pineapple and 3 lemons, and place in a punch bowl with the juice only of 9 other lemons. Add 2 pounds of sugar, and let these ingredients stand several hours. Then add 1 quart each of green tea, Jamaica rum, brandy, claret, a pint of curaçao, and allow it to stand another hour. Then place in the punch bowl with a large block of ice, and pour in 6 quarts of champagne. New York Club Punch. Take 2 pounds of lump sugar and squeeze over it the juice of 1 dozen lemons, using a little of the grated rind. Let this stand 3 hours, then strain the syrup through 2 thicknesses of flannel and set away on ice. Just before serving, add 1 quart each of brandy, Jamaica rum, Madeira, and water. Milk Punch. Take the juice and shaved peel of 2 dozen lemons. Mix with 5 quarts of water, 3 pounds of loaf sugar, and 6 quarts of rum. Stir until the sugar is dissolved. Then add 2 quarts of boiling milk and allow the mixture to stand 24 hours. Then strain twice through a cloth. Apple Toddy 1. Bake slowly 2 dozen cored apples until done. Place in a large stone jar with 8 pounds of sugar. Pour over them 4 gallons of boiling water and let stand for 48 hours. Then remove the apples and crush them after taking off the skins. Return the fine pulp to the jar and add 1 gallon of whiskey, 1 gallon of brandy, 1 gallon of peach brandy, and 3 pints of Jamaica rum. The toddy should stand in the covered jar for a week before being used. Apple Toddy 2. Prepare 6 cored apples by sticking a dozen cloves in each and baking slowly until soft. Put them in a stone jar and pour over them a toddy made of 2 quarts of whiskey, 1 quart of brandy, 1 pint of rum, and 3 cups of water. Sweeten to taste and cover closely, allowing the mixture to blend for a week before using. End of Part 10. End of Recipes for Epicures by Joe Tilden.